people.
What up YouTube, BonzEye here, back with another video. This is going to be the part 6 of Al's journey into Warhammer 40K. If you guys are new to the series, you might as well click here and go back to part 1 to see Allan's journey from the very beginning. But if you've been tuning in along, thanks for sticking by. So yeah, in this part of Allan's journey, he's going to be reacting to the Eldar section of Bricky's Every Warhammer Faction Explained Part 2. Just the Eldar section, because yeah, there was a lot for us to discuss after that. So yeah, I hope you all are looking forward to seeing Allan's reaction to the Craftworld Eldar, the Drukhari, and the Harlequins. The discussion part of this video was a bit long because I added a couple of information myself at the end of the video. That said, it's fine because I also forgot to take his initial thoughts prior to doing the reaction, so it kind of balances out in the end. Anyway, with that, let's get right into the video.
Let's get into the Eldar. I've heard mentions of it, of these people. Let's do this.
So let's talk about the Eldar, or also known as the Aeldari, which are a super hyper-specialized and very technologically advanced race of, well, elf people. They were, as well, responsible for the creation of Slaanesh, the newest demon god. How'd they do that?
How?
Debauchery on a world-ending scale. See, back in the day, it was just Khorne, Tzeentch, and Nurgle. And the Eldar are very, very ancient. Millions of years. These Eldar, however, have a bit of a sensory problem. You know, every kind of pain or feeling that you have is a little bit amplified compared to the normal. However, with Eldar, as their race advanced so excessively, and they became so self-reliant, and everything became so easy.
Self-reliant.
There was no requirement for food production anymore. There was no shortages. Everything was basically done. Everyone was so comfortable. And that comfort breeded this weird sedation. And that sedation breeded the requirement for more and more debauchery.
Debauchery!
Debauchery! Debauchery!
Debauchery!
When everything you have can be so easily acquired, you will end up down this road of pure debauchery. All of the senses the Eldar had that were so powerful, things like feeling, happiness, sadness, and just evil and good, all needed to be satisfied and satiated. And the desire to satiate these senses grew more and more with worse and worse debauchery. It started off with things like sex and drugs becoming so much more rampant because these are the first things you generally turn to when requirements for living are so easily accessible. It would get to the point that made Sander Cohen in BioShock look sane. All right, this is the kind of debauchery it led to. It was constantly satisfying and satiating these sexual and sadistic or masochistic fantasies that only elevated and elevated, and this was species-wide. People started going down darker, more depraved, and more violent paths as time went on. However, some people didn't entirely take to that. Some of the Eldar were looking at this depraved species that they had become and said, no thanks for me, dog, I'm good. And they bailed. These are the Craftworld Eldar.
Craftworld.
They left on these giant continent-sized starships called Craftworlds. They believed in learning the old ways of the Eldar and pushing away from this depravity and debauchery and going back to their main roots. And so they would segment themselves on these giant Craftworlds far in the outer reaches of space. They even had this thing called the Webway. Remember what we mentioned about warp travel with the Ethereal? Well, the Eldar had something way safer called a Webway. The Eldar Webway is actually like a pocket dimension kind of thing. And in that pocket dimension, there were also more horrible, depraved groups and clans that would spend their time in there. And if you imagine the debauchery was bad already, these were debauchery X10. So all of this continued, and it bloated until Slaanesh just burst forth. All that emotion, all that mental, thought processes, I suppose, all of this in such a condensed space. Don't forget, this is all being shot, all their souls as well, into the warp. All of this depravity right into the warp. So what happened? Boom! Slaanesh was birthed and killed off 90% of the entire Eldar population. Untold trillions trillions had their souls ripped from their bodies and their actual fleshy bodies devoured by Slaanesh demons. The entirety
Crazy.
of the Eldar race was eaten alive and their souls consumed to the Prince of Pleasure. All of them got fucked up. It was so bad that it literally ripped a warp hole into the fabric of the materium called the Eye of Terror. That's literally this like quasi horrifying gateway portal from the materium and the immaterium right next to Cadia. And it is horrifying. So this Slaanesh, also known as She Who Thirsts by the Eldar, slaughtered the entire population except for a couple. Those in the craft worlds were actually not affected by this as they were so far in the reaches of the galaxy. That crazy crack, that birth of Slaanesh only affected the ones in the center. So these craft world Eldar were able to escape, but Slaanesh got their sights on them. Every time an Eldar will die, their soul doesn't just pass into the warp naturally. It goes straight to Slaanesh, craft world or not. What about those people in the webway? Well, imagine that giant birth happening, but they were only able to just barely get a grasp onto you. Slaanesh was just barely able to hold on. These people are the Dark Eldar, or also known as the Drukhari. The Eldar population right now is so massively small. It is minuscule compared to any of the other most of the other populations in the universe. The Eldar are consistently having issues trying to get their population up because as their souls are constantly being hungered by from Slaanesh, they realize their entire species is doomed. And they understand it very well. Since the time of the fall, our race has been haunted by what we, in our reckless pursuit of hedonistic indulgence, gave birth to. Though our dreams once overturned worlds and quenched suns, we are now but fitful shadows clinging to the edge of existence. All the stars in the sky cannot blot out the hateful glare of the red moon's eye. The birthing place of the great enemy pulses with all the malice of a demon that is dreaming, casting its shadow over all we have ever done and all we ever shall. Every twisted strand of fate and casting of the runes leads me to this time, to this place, and it is clear that the final battle awaits me at the ancient Crone worlds, a conflict the likes of which has not been seen since the Mon-Kai warred amongst themselves and their corpse of a seer fell to his traitorous son. Is coming, and all my steps lead towards it, no matter that I walk other paths. I see the stars stained red with the blood of the Mon-Kai, and though their wars do not concern me, I would gladly let them destroy one another. I know that to avoid this fight is to condemn my race to inevitable doom, and though all I see is darkness, I know that I will not flinch from my destiny. And now let's talk about cute plastic models.
Bro, I'm straight up not having
Craftworld Eldar.
The first playable race we have for the Eldar are the Craftworld Eldar and living in those Craftworld starships I mentioned earlier. And each of them have their own kind of Craftworld, almost like a Space Marine Legion. Each Craftworld is in itself its own special kind of group. And the Eldar themselves are very fast and rely a lot on trickery. They are squishy, a bit weak, but they're very in tune as psychers. Tons of psychers across the entire Eldar population, and their weaponry and abilities are fast and extremely hard-hitting, but of course rather fragile. Understanding an Eldar's brain is an exercise in futility. They are all over the place in confusion and trickery on a whole galactic scale. They fight weird, they think weirder, and Eldar in their own right really rely on this to keep their species alive. They need to think about deception and the strangeness of what they do if they truly want to not be immediately murdered and slaughtered wholesale thanks to their entirely small population. However, I must say that it seems like their population is getting slightly better. These craft worlds hold millions upon millions of people. And as they continually, reproduce and have their craft worlds expand, losing a few people in battle, while hurts a lot, they aren't really losing what's extremely precious to them. It's not like every single death means the death of their species. It seems like they're kind of on the upturn a little bit. They're still a doomed race being sucked into Slaanesh every time someone dies, but they are definitely doing a little bit better than they were before. Eldar are fast, cunning, And what they don't make up for in tankiness, they make up for in extremely advanced weaponry. They also call humans Bonkai, which is something I mentioned earlier.
Okay.
That is a derogatory slur for humans in the
Monkai.
world. Why is it called Monkai? Well, it's because you can't, in your game, call people monkeys. On the tabletop, exactly what I said. Not very tanky, generally pretty squishy, hit like trucks, and move at Mach 5. Fast, hit hard, die fast. Exactly how it sounds. They've been good for a very long time, too. We bring only death and leave only carry on. It is a message even a human can understand. Eldar. So, Drukhari. Let's talk about the Dark Eldar.
Oh, today's episode.
Drukhari.
That's fucked up. It's fucked up. That's fucked up.
So those people I mentioned in the webway, in the super deranged cults and the depraved people of the Eldar, in the webway, they didn't quite get a hold onto them. Slaanesh like has them, but it has them on like by the pinky finger. And they're slowly being consumed by Slaanesh, but they found out they can stave her off by doing Slaanesh things. The Dark Eldar are by far the worst, most horrifying, disgusting, depraved, and brutal race in all of Warhammer 40K. They are entirely a group of people whose full purpose to save their species from extinction, to go into planets, raid them, and take as many slaves as they possibly can to torture them for 1, 5, 10, 20, a million years, because that torture will keep them from dying. They look very BDSM style too. They definitely have a lot more spiky bits and they have a lot more of that kind of leathery black look to them. But let's say you are an upstanding Imperial citizen, living life on a regular planet. You get invaded by the Necrons. The Necrons will shoot you with a deatomizer and you will be destroyed in a millisecond, and that's it. Not the worst way to go. You are invaded by Chaos Marines or something. You take a bolter shot to the head or a chain sword across your stomach and you get cut in half. Painful, but not the worst. The Orcs arrive. They beat you to death. Hurts, but, you know, whatever. Tyranids, they eat you alive.
Oh.
Rough. The Dark Eldar. The Dark Eldar. This is going to get a little graphic. I apologize. You pray you die. You don't. You are instead taken as a human slave. Your life will be endless work and agony, 24/7. They will make sure you can't not die, as your pain satisfies them. They will hook you up to all manner of torture devices. They will inject pain-based like stimuli drugs directly into your nervous system. They will slowly run razor blades across your skin. They will fillet you and just pull out your teeth and your fingernails one by one. They will remove your appendages and your skin and wait for it to grow back so they can do it again. They will murder and torture and use the R word, it rhymes with grape, your entire family in front of you, and do the exact same thing to them. You yourself will also be rhymes with grape anywhere and everywhere possible, and this will occur for 20 years until you are no longer satisfying to them. And then you will be contorted, crushed, and twisted into some form of trophy, a fleshy trophy, or a ring, or a couch, or a TV stand, or perhaps a wonderful hat, while you are, of course, still alive and breathing, and you will become a moaning, fleshy trophy for eternity. And that is what happens when you are taken by the Dark Eldar. They are the most depraved, most horrifying race in all of 40K. They look the part, and they do it so they all don't die. They are literally forced to do this, because if they don't, Slaanesh's grip will get harder, and they will have their souls pulled away. So long as they keep doing this, Slaanesh is like, "You're doing good, man. You're doing solid. You keep that shit up, you elf-eared bastards." That's the Dark Eldar. That's the Drukhari. They are horrible. On the tabletop, they're actually kind of like Eldar, but more extreme. They are even squishier than the Eldar, but they hit generally even harder. Fast attacks, skirmishers, really quick speed, like get around them, do a lot of damage, get away kind of stuff. That's mostly the Dark Eldar. Look up the definition of grim dark in a dictionary. You'll find a picture of the Dark Eldar. And Sev from Republic Commando. A quote from Mr. Vecht. We are the lords of despair, masters of terror. Dread and agony are our meat and wine, and they are plentiful indeed. Dark Eldar. Let's talk about the Harlequins. Clowns.
What's the matter?
Harlequins.
Don't you want to have some fun?
The Harlequins are a bizarre race of Eldar. They're demonic clown performers. They're like a weird mix of Sander Cohen from BioShock and Jin from League of Legends, but in a more clown theme. They're artists of death and perfecters of their craft. They do not belong to Craftworlds or any of the weird Drukhari people. They guard something called the Black Library, which is this giant tome of never-ending knowledge deep in the heart of the Eldar webway, and also guarded by their god named Kegorok, I believe is how you pronounce it.
Kegorok.
He is the laughing god. But it's the Eldar's laughing god? And these are the Harlequins, the Harlequin clowns. These are Eldar clowns, okay? So imagine the things that an Eldar, these depraved individuals, would find funny. And this is the god of that. It's a horror clown. These are gods of horror for us normal people. For them, they're like, oh, it's so funny. They're all dying horribly. Honk, honk. They're very bizarre and difficult to describe. They've escaped the ruinous powers of Slaanesh somehow, but their main thing is guarding that Black Library. And the Harlequins just... they're demon clown performers. They're barely any models on the tabletop. They're good in melee. They're demon clowns. I'm not sure. I got a quote. It is too easy for an Eldar to embrace the obscene virtues of chaos, for Slaanesh is nothing more than a manifestation of the Eldar mind in its most wild and unconstrained form. Human morality is meaningless to the Eldar, and to the dark side of the Eldar mind, all life is to be expended at a whim. Cruelty and generosity are but the impulse of a moment. Beauty and sensuality are virtues that can be expressed in bloodshed just as easily as in song. To an unfettered Eldar mind, there is neither sanity nor madness, but merely a wave of perfect existence fulfilled by its own savage momentum. They're very strange. The Harlequins, Drukhari, Eldar, they are an anomaly that make humans seem completely easy to understand in comparison. They range from rekindling their civilization to horrifying murder and also clowns. They're all over the place, but honestly, they represent quite well and are rather interesting, especially with the whole Slaanesh murdering everyone bit. So, yeah, Eldar. Now, bugs.
Ma, they following me, Ma. They following
Kieran
me.
is
The bugs.
Eldar, man. Quite
A lot to talk about with them, actually.
yeah, so much. There's like depraved, hedonistic.
The Drukhari.
Yeah, the Drukhari. Well, they're all hedonistic in their own ways. It's just that the Drukhari are like an exaggeration, like a polarization of an aspect of that depravity, and crazy. So much depravity among the trillions of Eldar that I'm sure there are other races out there, but for them to, and I guess it goes back to their psychic abilities,
They're much more psychically...
their affinity.
They're the strongest, period.
Psychic
At
affinity
least naturally.
With that depravity and that psychic affinity within their race, they amassed the critical requirement or whatever.
Critical warp
yeah,
energy.
Yeah, critical warp energy, perverted warp energy to birth a chaos god, Slaanesh. That is insane.
So that was going back to what I was talking about earlier about, like, you know, humans do, like, you know, impact the warp and affect the chaos gods, but like, if we're talking about who has a bigger impact on the warp, it would definitely be the Eldar. Because they straight up, I mean, so the Craftworld Eldar, what do you think about that?
I think they may look back to the heyday of when the Eldar ruled the universe and be like, oh, we'll hold on to these sort of virtuous and more, well, not virtuous, I would say, like that sort of less hedonistic method of.
They are generally as, like, they don't indulge actually. Like, they're the quite opposite. In fact, they left their empire when they noticed it becoming hedonistic. So they're actually anti-hedonists.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's
They're
not
actually like the good elves, are they?
it's,
Not
yeah, for all,
good in the
I mean,
sense
they're
that
arrogant and all that, but
They're
yeah,
the not hedon, like
they're the non-hedonistic ones.
non-pleasure-seeking sick bastards.
Yeah. Like their issues are like their arrogance and
Of
stuff
course,
like
I
that.
mean,
Like
if you descended from a race that ruled,
The
not
un-
like
the galaxy.
galaxy. Of course, you'd be arrogant. That's a given. Are they
Do
any
you
more powerful or weaker than the Drukhari? There's no infighting amongst themselves. Is
No,
there?
there is. There's a
There
lot
is.
there. Yeah, I mean, the Drukhari would probably kidnap them and take them to their home place and rape them. So, of course, they're fighting. The Drukhari are depraved maniacs. They don't
One
care.
thing that the ones that escaped, and they're pursued by Slaanesh as well.
They're also
these are-
still pursued by Slaanesh. When they die, they go straight into Slaanesh. They don't go and peacefully exist in the warp, if that's even a thing.
I reckon they are the real remnant of the Eldar.
The heyday Eldar. Yeah.
Because the other two, the Drukhari and the Jokers, they sort of, in some aspect, they serve Slaanesh, they submit.
No, the other guys don't serve Slaanesh. They serve Kagarath, their own god.
Yeah, I know, but like in a way, they submit to their impulse of, like, their hedonistic impulses.
but-
not directly serving as like, oh, we worship you, but they give in to that nature. Whereas Craftworld Eldars are like, they're the only ones that Slaanesh is really pursuing. The other guys, Slaanesh is not really.
Slaanesh
To me,
can't.
they Slaanesh doesn't really like.
Slaanesh actively pursues them.
Yeah.
But just because they found certain ways, like I think they put their souls in these soul gems or something, and then when their people
are
die,
these? Who are
when
these?
their people die, the Craftworld.
Uh-huh.
So when their people die, they put their souls in these gems, and then they put those gems on some of their weapons and armors, and it's like their ancestors literally fight alongside them in these gems,
Alright.
and they create these like their weapons, their contrast, like a Wraithbone contrast or something, and then it has like their ancestors' spirits inside it, and they fight alongside their one. So because they do that, they contains their souls, and it doesn't go to Slaanesh, and it doesn't feed Slaanesh.
Alright.
So that's
But
their
the other
but-
ones, do their souls go to the Slaanesh? To the warp?
No, the Jokesters no. The Jokesters are perfectly protected by Kagarath. Somehow Kagarath protects them. Slaanesh doesn't get shit from them.
Interesting.
And Drukhari, yes, if they die, they're fucked.
Okay.
So they just have to survive somehow, become immortal or something.
Yeah. It's like, and what god do these Craftworld Elders serve?
They're all gods. They had their like, I forgot what it's called, alien. Like they had their own elven gods. They worship their old elven
Okay.
gods. So, but those gods are all dead.
Like their own Emperor Imperium.
No, they had like a genuine god figures that it was never like a human or one of them who manifested. The emperor is like a unique case. Yeah. So
Emperor was human.
the emperor was sort of technically human, maybe, possibly. There are theories. Nobody freaking knows.
I guess so. That's their own emperor. Like in perpetuity, this may have been some character or something that became a god and they worshipped in their own lore and whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I
but
think-
it's not a chaos thing.
It's not a chaos thing. Yeah.
It's something.
Yes.
That, yeah. It's an ideal. It's another idol.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, another idol.
Yeah.
So they had their idols, and I don't think their idols were ever mortal. I think idols were straight up created by them actually, because it will be mentioned. He'll mention the war in heaven and stuff like that. They straight up created their gods, like period. Actually, Slaanesh is not the first god they created. Kagarath and the other gods, they created their
That makes
gods.
sense.
Back in their heyday, they straight up created their gods, and they were so powerful they could even manifest their gods in real space. They had their own Korn type god, who was like their war god, and they could bring him into real space and have him fight for them. Because there's someone that they had to fight who hasn't been introduced yet. And
Okay.
yeah, there was something called the war in heaven,
Okay.
long time ago, 60 million years in the past, and then
Okay.
they needed to create
60
gods.
million before. Oh.
They're
Wow.
ancient. Yeah, they're
Very
ancient. Right.
But there are other ancient races.
Yes.
Okay.
But yeah, basically like the Eldar are powerful, and yeah, Slaanesh is not the first god they've created. They created their original gods, but those gods got consumed by Slaanesh when Slaanesh came into existence. Out of all of those gods, the only one there's only 3 that are still alive. The war god, who's alive as shards, like he was split into different shards, and he can sometimes be found and forged into these avatars of Cain. That's what they're called. So that's their war god. They worship Cain, not Corn. Yeah, and then after that they have this female one who is being kept by Nurgle. Nurgle likes to experiment on her and give her poxes and plagues. Like, she's his little plaything. And then the last one is Kagorok, who survived, and he's like fully independent. He doesn't do, he's on his own, and he protects his followers from Slaanesh.
Wow.
Anyway, any last remarks on the Eldar?
I like humans better, really. Like, Eldar, all powerful, all that. It's just like ancient. Yeah, that's cool. I feel like I like the character of
humans.
Yeah, even Warp Astartes or Demon Astartes.
Chaos Astartes.
Chaos Astartes.
Ancient.
But, yeah, very, very interesting race in the mix there.
All right.
Xeno, are they considered like?
Yeah, they're Xeno. All right, we'll end it here and we'll catch you guys in the next episode.